Okay, for this dress, I'm going to be using two different patterns and kind of smooshing them together. For the skirt, I'm going to be using the same pattern that I used for the petticoat. That's the Black Snail pattern for the dress and the sleeveless Spencer, and that's 0119. So that's what this pattern looks like. And then for the bodice, I'm going to be using Angela Clayton's Regency bodice pattern, or Bridgerton bodice pattern, from her Patreon. So I subscribed to her Patreon for like a month just to get this pattern. So this is what I'm going to be using. Hopefully it works out. We're not the same size, I don't think, so I'm going to have to make some adjustments, but I think we're fairly close in size, so I don't think it should be too many adjustments. Also for this mock-up, I'm going to do one puff sleeve and then one like flutter sleeve just to see how it looks. I'm kind of going for this reference image, the sleeves on that, so we'll see whether I like the puff sleeve or the like flutter sleeve a little bit better. Okay, so this pattern needs a lot of work. I really don't understand what she was going for with this. I don't know. Normally, I really like her patterns when they're commercial patterns, but this is just like very strange. She's got just like slash marks for the bust darts here. And then like this bodice piece was, for one, backwards. So that was not great. But also like it's so narrow, whereas like, I don't know, the backs of gowns usually just are not this narrow with like one big front piece. It makes no sense. So I cut stuff apart, taped stuff back together, and I'm gonna try this again. So I've taped all of the pieces together. This makes one big piece, right? And like obviously I don't want to make it just one big piece. That doesn't make much sense. I'm gonna try to like mess with this and see what I can get out of it. So I'm kind of guessing that this is where the side seam is. I'm not sure. The side seam could also be here. She just didn't mark it, so that's not ideal. But I am gonna act as though this is the side seam here. This one was the original line right here. So my front under bust measurement is 14 inches total, so 7 inches on the half. So from this side seam to the center front is 9 1/4. So I need to take about 2 inches out of that. I'm going to leave it a little bit on the larger side. It's easier to pin stuff out in the fitting than like try to put fabric back in. So I'll err on the larger side and we'll see how this goes in fitting. So I'm just going to use where her dart placements are and I don't know, kind of go with that. Though I don't really love the idea of having two darts in the front. I think that's kind of unnecessary, but let's see. Okay, so I'm looking at this image here, and it does look like there are two bust darts on each side, so I will go with that. That's fine. When I do the overlay, I'm just going to gather it, so I won't cut the darts out of those. I'll just do it as a continuous line, but we're just going to do the underlayer in muslin first. So I've got those cut out. That means that this is now 7 1/4 inches, so that's fine. Front bust is 20 inches, so on the half that should be about 10, and that is correct. So this piece seems fine. Great. My total under bust measurement is 29 inches, so on the half that's 14 1/2. Right now this is measuring at, let's see, 17 1/2 minus those two darts, so this is at 15 1/2. So I need to take another inch out of this somewhere. I think that I'll just take it wherever I decide to make a seam. So I think I'm going to put this seam here. I drew this in, and it just, I think it makes that back piece look more like a correct width. So I'll just take that inch off of each side, so that's a 1/2 inch off of the front and off of the back. For the total bust side measurement, my bust measurement is 36 to 38 depending on the day, so we'll just see how that goes. Right now this is at a 40, it looks like. My ruler doesn't go all the way over, so kind of mark that where that stops. And that's another 1.5 inches past that. So this right now is at 19 1/2, and that'll be 39 inches. So that's a little bit too large. So around where the bust measurement is, that's like about there. I'm gonna also take, let's see, 39 1/2. Probably wanna go for like 37 1/2. So I'm gonna also take a 1/2 inch off of either side there, because on the half that'll make the whole thing. So basically there's a whole 1/2 inch or a whole inch coming off of this, so a 1/2 inch off of each piece that I've kind of designated. I don't know, hopefully this pattern works. It's just kind of all over the place. So I'll just cut one side of that. And just slide it over there so it's in the right place. This is gonna get cut apart permanently, but I want to blend the arm's eye and the hem out so that it's not like really jaggedy. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Great, so those match up. So now I've got like a wider back piece, so this looks more correct. And then I've got one full front piece that goes from front to kind of like side back seam. And hopefully that's okay. I might need to split it up into 2 pieces eventually if it looks really strange in the fitting, but I'm gonna go with this for now. So now I'm just gonna cut the darts out and I'm gonna cut all the seam allowances off, and then I can actually start cutting this mock-up. The other thing I don't like about this is that she used really thick lines for outlining all of this. So it like is the actual stitch line on the inside or the outside. I'm gonna go with the inside because that just usually makes more sense. But when it's such a thick line, it's kind of hard to tell. Well, first and foremost, I was gonna do 2 sleeve options. I've got like the normal puff sleeve here and the flutter sleeve over here, and I don't know why I thought that this would work with a shift, but obviously the shift shows under the flutter sleeve, so that's not gonna work, so we're just striking this option. I guess I could wear it without the shift, and that, I mean, it should have made sense that this would not work with the undergarments that I'm making, and this is why they don't wear shifts in Bridgerton, is because they're wearing all these little fancy gowns with their tiny flutter sleeves. It just didn't occur to me. Anyways, so we're definitely going with the puff sleeve option, which is fine. I think it's cuter anyways. Like the flutter sleeve is like elegant and pretty, but I want to be a cutesy princess, so we're doing that. Just a first note, shift is like really shoved in here, but it seems to be working okay now that I've got that in there. So I'll probably honestly have to do flipper bones on both sides of the sleeve, like both at the top where the like shoulder is, and then also at the bottom, so that I can make sure that it's really tucked into the shift and not gonna cause a problem. So one of the big changes that I want to make, I'm not gonna show it by standing on a chair here because I already know the change I want to make. If you saw my petticoat video, the skirt it's a big tube. It just has longer length for the train. For the gown, I want to increase the volume so it's a little bit more like an A-line. It'll still be mostly a tube because that's the Regency silhouette, but I want to make it so that there's a little bit more volume around the hem and make it so that the train actually acts like a train and doesn't just kind of like puddle sadly on the ground. So that's one of the big changes that I want to make with this. Generally, it's a little bit too small. I think I ended up taking out too much because I wasn't accounting for all of the added volume of all of the undergarments that I'm wearing. So when I reduced the bodice down from Angela's own pattern, I just kind of went off of my normal measurements, but I wasn't really accounting for the bulk that the shift and the stays would add. So it's a little bit tight around the underbust for me right here, since that is kind of where the shift and the stays and the petticoat all overlap. It's probably one of the bulkier parts of this costume. So I will have to add a little bit back into here, but I think even just 1/2 inch will work. So I'll just add a 1/2 inch to the very bottom of the like bodice part. This part is gaping a bit, quite a bit actually, but I think when I pinch it out, it's really only about 1 inch of space, so I don't want to take too much out. I think that probably what I'll do is I'll end up gathering it, and then maybe when I'm doing the chiffon over top, I'll expand the pattern and gather it more so that it does get like a kind of ruched effect. I haven't decided yet. That's the kind of pattern alteration I can make once I've got a base pattern really fitted. It's pretty easy to just slash and spread to make it so that I can gather something down. So I'm not too worried about that in this fitting, but I just wanted to make a note that the neckline is too much. There's too much happening right here. So I think I will just gather it down, and I'll make a note on the pattern that this does get gathered down by a 1/2 inch. And it won't even look like gathers, it'll just be easing. The other issue, besides the fact that I can't raise my arms higher than this is all I got. Sorry, I'm like looking at my phone to be able to see a little bit closer because my mirror is so far away. But the other issue is that this is like very clearly not wide enough to cover all of the shift and everything. So the shift is kind of mostly pushed into the sleeve, which is fine, but this still has a 1/2 inch of seam allowance that I didn't tuck under, so this is definitely going to need to be wider. So probably bringing that to about here. Let me grab a tape measure. So if I want it to come into about here, then the total width of that is going to have to be about 2.5 inches. Right now I think I have the width of this strap at about 1 inch, so I definitely want this to come in further. I don't know. I also like how it looks better when it's just kind of pulled in higher rather than adding more width. So maybe I will just try to like anchor it against the shift up here rather than like letting it be way down here. But either way, I think this does need at least a 1/2 inch added to the strap just so that it will make it all the way around. I don't know, if I keep the seam allowance on there, then it does cover the shift pretty well. The only place that I'm having an issue right now is right at this corner here, and I think that it's just too drastic a sharp turn. So I think curving it out a little bit more, not a ton, so it like does still have kind of a square neckline, but I think curving it so it's a little smoother of a curve right here will end up hiding this shift better. The other thing is that the armscye is too small. Like this is just right up in my armpit and it's very uncomfortable, especially on this side. I don't know why more on this side when it doesn't have a sleeve or anything, but it's like really cutting right into my armpit and it hurts a lot. So for here, I'm gonna drop the armscye probably 1 inch, letting it have a little bit more space right here. So like where like your pec meets your armpit, it kind of sticks out, right? That's like a muscle that goes right here. And on this side, as I'm moving around, it's very, very uncomfortable. So I think I want to add a little bit, or like lower the armscye a tiny bit to make it so that that muscle has a little bit more space. So like about here, we'll start, and then all the way through the bottom to probably this back seam here. I think that'll be good. That'll give me a lot more space. This is just like very uncomfortable. So I think that's most of the alterations for the front. There's like this bit that I was talking about that'll get eased in, and that is marked on the pattern. I just didn't do it on the mock-up because I wanted to see what it would look like without the easing, and whether, I don't know, this pattern is fit to her body, not mine, obviously. So I wanted to see how it fit on my body first before I started doing all this extra stuff. So the darts seem fine. Like I think those are in a good place and I'm pretty happy with that. It's mostly just this needs to be eased in. So this looks kind of silly right now, but it'll look better later. Adding in the seam allowance, I think I do want to take that down to the 1/2 inch at the very front, but I think for like the shoulder strap part, leaving it where it's cut rather than where it should be stitched will just work out fine. Like I might be able to leave this more square rather than rounding it off if I stick a flipper bone right at the corner there. That'll kind of keep everything hidden away. So this will get multiple flipper bones all through the neckline just to keep everything all nice and tucked away and like not visible. Let's take a look at the back. Okay, so the back is very much too small. Like it just cuts in way too far. So the armscye, let's see. So while I was getting this on, even it's too small and it like ripped on this side. So this is all just generally too small. So maybe I need to add even more into the back. So it's like more like a full inch. I want to bring this out more to here. So we're going to add back to this armscye here. So we were taking away from the bottom of the armscye to give my arm some more space to like exist and not be up in my armpit. But I think here I want to add stuff back in there. And I just want to bring it all generally farther over. So that alteration will start around this seam, the back princess seam. So we're going to take this lower under the arm up to that seam, and then after this seam we're going to bring it straight up so that this is less dramatic of a curve and doesn't go quite as far into my shoulder blades. I think it is like a historically accurate silhouette to have it go really far back into the shoulder blades, but it's very uncomfortable, so I'm going to change it. You can see how this zipper is just like very it's like wavy. I don't have scoliosis or anything, so like this is not how it should look. There is some bulk being added from this shift down here, so that's not ideal. When I get actually dressed, we're gonna have to deal with that. But I think that I just need to add a lot more into the back piece so that there's more space. Instead of doing another mock-up, because I don't really have time to do another mock-up, the event is in just a couple of weeks, so I'm really running low on time. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make these alterations, and then I'm going to just leave a lot of extra seam allowance. And I do have enough fabric that if I need to recut some stuff, then I can do that. So I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll make a lining, and then I'll do another quick fitting, make sure everything's fitting properly. If it's not, then I have plenty of lining that I can recut. So that's kind of how I'm going to cut corners and not have to do another mock-up, but also still make sure that things are fitting. So the back is a mess. This is just like very off center. This all got released here because it just ripped when I was putting it on. So generally, yeah, this is like, if I pull it, then it'll go back to centered mostly. Even then, it's still not really. So I need a lot more space in this back part here. So I had said that I was gonna lower the armscye under there, but I think I'm gonna add a little bit in and just lower it down to around here instead. So I think maybe about an inch past that seam is where I'll lower it, and then from this inch past all the way up, I'm gonna add back into the seam so that I have a lot more space to move. And then I think I'll also just add some to the center back itself and to this side back piece as well. So I think I'm gonna add like maybe a full like 1.5 inches even, just so I do have some mobility space. It'll be easier if it's too big to take it out of that lining piece than it is to just have to recut everything. So I'm gonna err on the side of too big. That's pretty much it, I think. I gotta say, like, normally I really like Angela Clayton's patterns, but I don't think her patterns are not really made for mass consumption until she sends them to an actual pattern maker. So I think her patterns, that when she works with the commercial pattern makers, are really good. This one I got off of her Patreon, and it's really just a one-off kind of she threw this out here pattern, and I wouldn't really recommend using it for your own personal use unless you are the exact same size as her. I think generally I just want a little bit more volume in the skirt, so not only am I gonna make this skirt a little bit more A-line, but I think I'm just gonna expand the top as well. I think it's pretty cute. That amount of gather is nice, and maybe I'll leave it this way for the lining, but I think for the chiffon overlay I want it to be a lot more voluminous, and I want there to just be more generally. Cool, so those are the general plans. Let me grab my notebook really quick for all the alterations that I'm gonna make, starting from, let's start from the bottom up. For this skirt, I wanna splay that out, and that'll be for both the lining and for the overskirt. Then at the top of the skirt, just for the chiffon overlay, I want to expand how much is going into just the waist here. So I want the chiffon overlay to have a lot more gathering all around here than the lining will. For the lining, this silhouette is fine. So now that we're up here, for the waist seam, I want to expand that a little bit so I have a little bit more room. The waist seam will just get expanded by about 1/2 inch. Moving up, this will get eased in by 1/2 inch. And then the whole back generally needs to be expanded probably by 1.5 or 2 inches. So that's starting from 1 inch below the side back seam all the way up to where it meets the strap. So I think probably I'll smooth it out and try to add a full inch to the armscye side of it, and then I'll add another maybe 1/2 inch to both this seam here and to the center back seam. For the neckline, starting at this curve here, I'm going to add the 1/2 inch so that it matches the cut line of this mock-up rather than the stitch line. So this will just be expanded by a 1/2 inch all the way through the strap. This sleeve was pretty good. I don't think I need to make any changes for that. That will get like an actual armband in the real thing. Right now it's just a raw edge, but I don't think I need to do anything to that. I do want to figure out a closure. I haven't looked into like historical closures for this, except that I know that a lot of them did close in the front. Like they were kind of, it was a piece that laces up in the front and then a piece that covers over it. I don't want to do that. That's too much effort for what this costume is going to be and like for getting dressed. I want to be able to go to this Bridgerton event, have a couple drinks, and then go home and watch TV the rest of the night without having to make it a big ordeal to get undressed. So I want to be able to get comfy really quick after this event, and I also want it to be easy to get dressed because I am betting this event's going to take up a lot of my energy. So the transition into the event, I would like to be as smooth as possible. So I probably will make it so that it either laces up in the back, which is I don't think historically accurate, but maybe I'll try to look for evidence that maybe it is. If it is or is not, let me know. I'm not sure that those comments will get to me quick enough, but you know, might as well try. If all else fails, I was thinking like a side zipper. There is no side seam though, so I would have to add one in if I'm gonna do that, which is like not out of the question. Zippers absolutely not historically accurate, but yeah, no, whatever. All else fails, it'll get a back zipper, which I would really strongly prefer not to do just because back zippers are a lot more obvious than underarm zippers, but worst comes to worst, that's what we're doing. So that's pretty much it for all of the alterations on this. This one is getting quite a few, but they're all fairly minor alterations, so I think it should go fairly quickly, hopefully. So that's it for this mock-up fitting. If you liked this video, I don't know, some of you guys seem to really love the mock-up videos, but the general analytics tell me they're not super popular, but I think they're helpful and you guys have told me they're helpful before, so I'm gonna keep doing them as long as I have projects that need them. So if you do like them, let me know. If you don't like them, I guess let me know how I can improve them so you like them more. And if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I already kind of said that, but let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to see this become an actual thing that's sparkly, then subscribe to my channel to see more. Cool, well I hope to see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye!